Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Julie Ling, and from somewhere on this sweet, wild, sacred earth, and from the wild sweetness of my very own heart, this is the voice of wonder. Today is feeling very quiet where I am, and my impulse this morning was to set that aside. I woke up and did some of my practices and decided I would write first thing in the last couple of weeks in preparing for this. Was one morning I wrote, but otherwise I've just done preparations. And in the writing about something I felt so grateful for. There was a person in my life who had really been able to see and meet and revel in me in a way that I hadn't experienced before, like so much that they couldn't stop from moving in their joy at seeing me. And I realized yesterday I had watched the video from a day or two before and just felt so much delight in seeing myself being me, being fully me here, that I found I loved seeing my image on the camera, which had never happened, that I was delighted with me being me. And I realized yesterday, as I sat in the bathroom before I came in here, that I no longer needed that from that person because I could give it to myself. And that just felt like so much grace and so much wonder and so much beauty to know that I could see myself this way. And other people have said to me recently, I just love being here with you being. It's really impacting me. Someone else said, oh, I was so grateful to be in this breakout room with Julie and all she shared and just Julie being Julie. And I realized that it's changing the way I am in the world, the way I am with other people. And so I wrote a letter I'll probably never send to this person. And as I wrote, I realized that that had helped heal wounds of mine, and parts of those wounds are still there. And my impulse was to brush it aside. Oh, yeah, but I don't want to be in that place when I come on camera and do my inspiration meditation. I want to be in that place of outrageous joy and buoyancy and loving myself and luminousness and radiating that out. And I realized how often that's what I was trained to do. I think what most of us were trained to do. No, save that for the private time. We can't show that to anybody else. And we don't want to be that way. We want to be happy and joyful. I think our culture really promotes the notion that we should all be ever ready bunnies, always on, always going, 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 always happy, always banging the drum. And that trick Bullwinkle never works. It's not sustainable. And the more we push away those parts of ourselves, because we've been taught it's uncomfortable, and it is uncomfortable. And that discomfort is dangerous and should be avoided. And we should stay in this happy place, even if it's putting a smiley face sticker on ourselves and pretending. It's also known as spiritual bypass. And this morning I thought, no, if I am about all parts being welcome, and I am, and I've been doing this work for a long time, and this is coming up in me, then I want to open space for that. In the piece An Eye for an Eye, another way of looking at things, it's something I wrote about and talked about, that the notion of seeing other people's beauty even in the midst of their woundedness. And so that's what I invite you into this morning, to not set aside just for today or just for this moment the part of you that might be coming up that is still feeling old wounds, and maybe because of some sense of safety, recognizing them and touching them in ways that you haven't really before or felt safe to before or felt able to before. in this moment to meet that part of you with grace and with tenderness. The more we can meet these parts of ourselves with grace and with tenderness, the greater capacity we have to sit in the uncomfortableness of being with another person in their wounds, in their discomfort. And there's a poem from my book, the 30th of February, that I realize is calling to be shared. So I'm going to read that now. I invite you to just drop in. There is so often beauty in the pain, like how there can be sunshine in the rain. A little sun can turn the endless sheet to shimmering curtains of liquid light that one remembers in the night. What had seemed ugly can suddenly be a flowing river that sets you free. But when you turn away your face from what you've been told is ugly is just disgrace, you miss the light, you miss the grace. There is so often beauty in the pain, and we've been taught to turn, to not look again, and so we miss the joy, the sweetness of remembering the light within the water, shimmering. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, they say, but suffering is what comes when we turn away. We grieve only what we love and forget that love can never go away, that love always stays. And the truth of that lovely song, joy is like the rain. Joy is like the rain. Just letting yourself drop in, noticing the breath breathing you, noticing how it breathes in a little more grace, a little more kindness, and breathes out a little of the discomfort, a little of the pain. And maybe right now your pain isn't coming up. And maybe there's someone you know who is in pain that you can hold gently and see their beauty in the midst of their woundedness. It might be someone you care for deeply. It might be yourself. Just let the breath wash over you and wash over your pain, touching it with open with hands with fingertips of grace and with unconditional love for you, seeing your beauty with this wound, with this pain, or your friend in their beauty with their pain. And noticing still the breath as it rises and falls, the breath which comes whether you feel outrageous joy or deep sadness, Whether you were touching the part of you that delights or the part of you that feels sad. A mentor of mine, Amora Pagano, who I studied 5 rhythms with her and has gone on to found Azul, teaches dance, conscious embodiment, said years ago in a workshop I was in, the degree to which we experience our joy, our sadness, is the degree to which we allow ourselves to experience our joy. So I invite you today to touch your sadness or your pain, whatever's arising, or if yours isn't that of a friend you know, with compassion. Or if you can't, to simply let the breath, the sacred breath, touch it. The breath which is here for you, no matter what you are feeling, what you are not allowing yourself to feel, what you are embracing, what you are resisting. The breath which is always here for you, rising and falling like a sacred wave, bringing in life and washing away what's no longer served. And now I invite you, if you're willing, to imagine someone who irritates the bejesus out of you, or that you have a lot of judgment about, or you just don't get and you can't understand why they would be this way or do these things. And hold that part of you for a moment, that irritation, that angst, that judgment, that pushing against. Why can't they just be different? One of the things I've learned in the last couple of years, kind of the hard way, is that often when other people aren't behaving the way I really wish they would or think they should, it's seldom as I used to think because they won't. It's almost always because they can't. They aren't able to. They don't have the capacity. Their wound is too big and too deep. And so I invite you just for a moment to imagine what wound this person might have, that they are so irritating, so annoying, so worthy of your judgment, which feels so damn righteous. And just for a moment, let the compassion of the breath of this wave that comes and goes touch your irritation and judgment, and perhaps touch them for just a fleeting moment with that same grace and compassion. And even if you can't feel it, offering your willingness to acknowledge that whatever this is that bothers you so much is coming likely from a wound of theirs. And even if you can't feel it, offering your willingness to wish them well, wish them healing, wish them this ease of the kindness of the breath that comes and goes in all of us, whether we notice it or not. And bringing your awareness now back to yourself in feeling the rise and the fall of the breath. washing up into your heart and soothing it and carrying away little bits of debris or detritus. The breath of kindness that comes and goes, whether you notice it or not, that soothes, that meets with grace. And I invite you today, in any moments where something arises in you, whether it's an old wound of yours, a sadness that you'd rather push away, or an irritation with someone else that you'd rather push away or rather push them away, that you simply notice your breath and how it breathes you, irregardless of what's alive in you or what isn't, of what you notice in another or don't. And that just for a moment, perhaps you could allow it to be met in you with a kind eye, with the eyes of grace, with the eyes of love. And even if you can't feel it, knowing that your breath is meeting you, no matter how you are, and bringing you the same breath of life, whether you are joyful or sad, that perhaps inside of you there is room and grace for all your parts. And perhaps you can extend a tiny bit of that to whatever comes before you or into your awareness, whether you feel it or not. Perhaps in your breath, it is already there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I invite you to a day of welcome for whatever arises within yourself, for whatever appears outside of you. From the wild sweetness of my very own heart, this is Julie Ling, and this is the Voice of Wonder. Have a blessed day, whatever arises within you.